What's good, everyone? Welcome back on the channel, especially to the channel members who will see this video first. It's Champions League preview night, Inter versus Slavia Praha tomorrow, 8 p.m. UK time kickoff. And there's some tasty things to discuss in terms of Dimarco and Chivu's press conference before the game. But obviously, before we get into it all, you know what to do. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I want to get into straight away what is the thumbnail, the title of the video. Dimarco's words on Simone Inzaghi's usage of him. So in the pre-match, here he is pictured. He was asked about, recently you're completing full 90 minutes and you're looking in good shape. What's going on? Is something changed? He's like, no, from my point of view, nothing. I've always trained at 100%. It was just a choice of the coach, which of course he's referring to Simone. Playing more often, 90 minutes, helps you grow in condition rather than going out mathematically after 60 minutes. So that line is all specifically mathematically after 60 minutes. We know Inzaghi's pre-programmed substitution, regardless of the game state, regardless of the result, regardless of how the player is playing. Shots fired from Dimarco. But as I tweeted, in response to this shots fired by Dimarco, I think Dimarco has obviously it seems like he just wanted to fire these shots, not really paying attention to the accuracy of what he's saying, because in general, yes, definitely, we know Inzaghi had these issues in terms of pre-programmed substitutions, especially with the wing backs most of the time, especially with Dimarco most of the time. But if Dimarco only thought back to himself about the start of last season, facts, truth, this is what the truth was. He started every single game at the beginning of last season, and then from match day 3 onwards, match day 3, 4, 5 in Serie A, full 90 minutes covered, and then match day 7 and 8, full 90 minutes. So this is not anything new, and I don't think there was any particular need to make of this as something different that Chivu is doing, because if Chivu is doing something different, it's not about the usage of him. It's probably got to do with the training or whatever he's asking for him tactically or whatever. So interesting there, and of course it's part and parcel of the game. Once a coach leaves, I'm sure there's things that a lot of players liked about Inzaghi, some things that players dislike. So I guess the pre-programmed substitution was one of them. But moving on to other things that Dimarco talked about that were a bit more positive. So here he's talking about actual things that Chivu is giving. So he's helping me regain the confidence that I had lost in these months. So he had a bit of a moment of self-reflection, self-admittance that his level, like we know, like we have been saying on this channel, but I think in Tristi everywhere, since January last season, really, this guy's level completely dropped off, and of course it all came crashing down in that Champions League final, where now all fan bases know about his poor defensive ability, especially when it comes to defending shots, turning his back, the thing that he likes to do most. But yeah, he's saying that recently Chivu was helping him regain the confidence. The past, as it happened, when we won the championship, we said we don't talk about the past the same this year too. We started from zero, new coach, new stimulation. We have to follow him in the best possible way. And then he said the similar thing again in the actual press conference, that he was lacking a little bit personal confidence at a personal level, and then he realized that he hasn't performed as he did in previous years. That can always happen. I always try to improve, and now I'm coming out of it with the help of the coach and my teammates. So, which is true, as I said, Dimarco and Hakan both. I think I mentioned both of them. Remember in my video pre-season, 5 players under the most pressure at Inter. Dimarco was there, Hakan was there. Both Hakan and Dimarco have stepped up massively in the last few games. And a couple more games from Hakan. As I said, I'm ready to say sorry to Hakan, admit that he is back. And of course, I'm super happy for it. And Dimarco the same. A few more games at the way that he's been playing recently. And I'm ready to say that he is back. But of course, they need to maintain it more consistently. And then he said, yeah, he agreed with someone. One of the journalists said the Cagliari game was one of the best that they played in terms of mentality. And he said, yeah, it was great, never an easy ground, etc. And he went back to the Juventus game as well, where he reiterated that it's been years since Inter played like that in Turin, and we need to keep it up. And of course, they asked him about, is there a different mentality in Champions League? Because we know the stats for Inter in terms of goals conceded, the solidity that we have in Champions League compared to Serie A last couple of seasons is day and night. So why is that? And he says, we always try to approach the matches in the same way, but the Champions League is much tougher. You face world-class teams who've made mistakes when we thought too far ahead. So it's about taking game by game. They always say this. I'm pretty fed up of hearing Inter players say this because it always seems like they make those same mistakes anyway. And then again, he reiterated the line about being substituted at the 60th minute, and it's hard to gain condition like this, which is true. But at the same time, he is the one that's huffing and puffing by the 50th minute anyway. So it's kind of a two-edged sword, or what do they say? It's like, it's true. Maybe Inzaghi sometimes we know he should be keeping players on, especially if the game state required it, our most important players. But at the same time, Dimarco is hardly the player that gives you the most confidence going late into a game if you keep him on, especially if you're holding on to a lead. You'd rather bring Carlos Augusto on, really. Then let's move on to some of the words from our coach, Christian Chivu, who keeps reiterating that he's liked all the performances this season, even going back to the summer friendlies. And then, of course, the result influences thing. The Champions League always hides pitfalls. And then there are no easy matches, talking about the team that we are facing tomorrow in Slavia Praha. He says he expects continuity, attention, and humility. We always want to be dominating, but we always need to, control the game. And then, of course, there's the opponents. Then he says, yeah, do Inter need to do 12 out of 12 points in these first four, which is what I've said, and I think most Interisti agree. He said, no, you can't get yourself distracted. It's no point looking forward, looking ahead too far. Let's think game by game, think about Slavia, keep our feet on the ground 100%. We've seen in these early stages of the Champions League, sometimes there's been some shock results. So definitely that will be embarrassing. Bisek, he says, is training well. We will see him on the pitch once, sooner or later, which I hope is tomorrow. We'll get into the predicted lineups in a minute. Bodny, he says, of course, all the players put me in a tough spot with how they train, and he wants to reward these guys, these men, as he likes to say. And I try to please everyone a little bit. And he says the value among the players are very close. So he feels like, there's not too much difference, he says there's not too much difference between the starters and the substitutes. And he wanted to point out, actually, in Dimarco, that he was decisive in Cagliari in the defensive moment, which I forgot to point out. I think in my post-match reaction that I didn't point out, there was one moment where Dimarco did a fantastic block. So defensively, maybe Chivu has said something to him. He had a sliding tackle where he blocked the shot, and he celebrated like it was a, match-winning goal. So maybe there's the little change that Chivu might bring about in Dimash. Zomer and Martinez, of course, I think he's going to be asked the question on these two pretty much every conference. For me, they're all starters, but tomorrow, he says, it will be Zomer. I always make changes that are targeted with due merit to meritocracy. So it looks like maybe Zomer is becoming the Champions League goalkeeper and Martinez the Serie A one. We'll see. And then who is the vice Hakan? He says, is it always Barella? He says, I also have Zielinski. They're players of quality. Forti Bravi, so good players, quality players. It's always hard for me to select. So yeah, let's get into now the predicted lineups for tomorrow, and also give you my opinion on what I would do. So I think Zoma makes sense. If there's rotation, the Champions League rotation of goalkeepers, that's fine. At the back, Cherby coming back. I would just continue the Rai at the moment. He's only played 2 games in a row. I feel like his game suits Champions League football as well, more than Acerbi. Bastoni here, and again, this is Sport Media set. We know these Champions League prediction lineups are usually not very accurate, but neither are. Moving forward in my preview videos for Serie A as well, I might have to, make more of a disclaimer now. It really looks like Chivu and his backroom staff, there isn't no leaks at the moment. The predicted lineup that I had for the Cagliari game was not There was one day before, which is usually pretty accurate from Sky Sport Italia, but it looks like this season it's more up in the air. But these ones from Sport Media are usually they're not particularly accurate at all. But if we go off this, definitely I'll say that this players I want to start or players I want rested. I think Akanji 100% needs to be rested now. He's played so many games in a row for Inter and Switzerland. He needs and deserves a rest. And tomorrow's game is the perfect game for Bisek to come in, whether it's a right centre back or left centre back, because we can't forget Bisek actually says himself that he loves playing a left centre back, and he maybe had his best game ever at Inter against Arsenal at left centre back. Then the other player that has to play is definitely Sucic in midfield, has to come in, whether it's for Barella or Miki. I actually wouldn't mind. I think Barella, again, this is a player that maybe needs a rest, but someone that maybe needs a rest even more than Barella is Hakan. We need to really manage Hakan's minutes at the moment, because we still don't know who the vice Hakan is at the moment. Because if it's Barella, that's still not very good, because he's still playing so much football. Maybe it has to be Zielinski now, because Zielinski is fresh, fit. Rather than squeezing more minutes out of Barella in another position, or rather it being someone else now, even though my ideal vice Hakan in this team with the players that we have right now is still Nico Barella. Dumfries can return here, although I wouldn't mind to give for that continuity, to give Luis Enrique continuity, but yeah, you definitely don't want Bisek and Luis Enrique being your two defenders on one side. Dimarco comes back in as he rested against Cagliari, so that makes sense. And then up front, I definitely would have wanted to see one of Boni or Pio, really. I think Thuram is the one that I'm worried about minutes-wise now. I would like to see Boni, Lautaro front two there. And hopefully we can get some minutes for the likes of Zielinski, the likes of Luis Enrique, etc. Maybe even Andy Diouf, who knows. So that's Inter's lineup in terms of Slavia Praha. Actually, quickly, head-to-head, we have played Slavia Praha before, if you remember, back in 2019, Conte's first season. First, we drew to them at home. It was a very tough game that they played against. They were a very tough, physical team, made life very hard, and exposed Conte as the usual fraud that he is in Europe. Then we managed to beat them away. That was one of those iconic Lautaro-Lukaku link-up games, the Lula, the Lukaku outside of the foot assist to Lautaro for the volley. It's quite an iconic game for some reason, just even though it was just a group stage game. I remember it very, very well. And in terms of the table, of course, we know Inter are vying for these top 8 spots, and 6 points minimum tomorrow is needed to stay in the top 8. I think in terms of players to watch out for, the only players I know, I remember Zima, if it's the same one that he used to play for Torino in Serie A. Didn't quite work out for him, but he is a quality defender. And Chori, the striker here, if I remember, he's a big, tall, handful striker. And they play a 3-5-2, so they're going to try press us man for man, maybe, if they are going to try to be brave. But this should be, hopefully, another W in the bag. Hopefully another clean sheet like we did against Ajax. I am predicting, if this is the lineup that goes out tomorrow, I am predicting a Denzel Dumfries goal and maybe a Petar Sucic debut or first goal for Inter, and a Lautaro goal. So I'm going to go for another solid 2 or 3-0 win here, actually, for Inter. I think we are going to keep a clean sheet this time around. You guys let me know in the comments down below. Who would you start? Would you start Boni? Would you start Pio? Or Pio and Boni? I wouldn't mind that. I think these are the games to do some heavy rotation if possible, to manage the energies. I wouldn't mind some heavy rotation. I think Inter should still win, even if you fully rotate this lineup, even if you put the full bench 11, in my opinion. But of course, that would be way too much, and the chemistry and the it wouldn't be there. But anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. See you tomorrow for the post-match reaction. Ciao ragazzi.